guys, welcome back to another video. Today I wanted to get back into animation and try out Procreate Dreams. Procreate has become my primary digital art making app, so when I heard that they were coming out with an animation app, I was really excited to try it out. I don't animate much at all in recent times, so my skills are probably a little rusty, but in my early days on YouTube, I was pretty much known as an animator, so I'm curious to return to my roots and see if it's still something I'm cut out for. Animation is not easy, but I do miss it. It was a lot of fun, and it's very rewarding. There's just something about seeing your pictures move around and stuff. It's really cool. It's like you brought something to life. Anyway, so those two were some practice animations I've done so far in messing around with the program, and now I'm ready to make something a little bit more polished. So let's get started. For this animation, I decided to go with something very familiar and easy and simple, so I decided to animate two of my earliest OCs just sort of walking together in their school uniforms, probably on their way to school or something. So to start out, I'm just gonna draw the first frame of these two just to sort of get my bearings of things, and you can tell I haven't animated in a while because I just dove right into the line art, and then after I realized it, I was like, oh, I should probably do a little sketch animation because this is an animation I'm making, not an illustration. So I set aside that first initial line art and I sketched all the frames that I need. You can see here I'm sort of practicing and seeing how they're gonna look when they're animated, just to make sure the overall composition is all right before I start putting it together. Alright, now let's open the program. The type of animation I'm most familiar with and what I prefer the best is frame by frame animation, so that's primarily what I'm going to be focusing on in this video. I'll explore Procreate Dreams' more advanced animation features on my own and see how I can incorporate them into my animation style, but for this video I'm just going to keep things simple and just make a simple frame by frame animation. You can see here my very clumsy beginnings in working with the program. I really had to get used to the technicalities of it and just how to use it in general, and you can see I'm like struggling just putting the basic frames in, so there is a little bit of a learning curve when opening this program for the first time, so don't feel bad if you struggle as well. One of the first things I really love about this program so far though is that you can change the frames per second settings, and it's really cool. They have default ones already prepared for you. So the default one is cinema, which is 24 frames per second. I changed mine to anime, which is 15 frames per second, but they have a load of other options as well for you to explore, so I thought that was neat. So I finally have all my frames added and I'm trying it out and it looks okay. Yeah, it's a good start. So the first adjustment I made here is I staggered their walking cycle a little bit by making the girl on the right's walking cycle start with the second frame instead of the first frame, if that makes sense. Another interesting thing I did, so instead of having each frame last like just the smallest amount of time and then it truly be 15 frames per second, I've noticed it was a little bit fast for my animation. Now, the natural way to fix this would be to add frames to the animation to make it a little smoother and not like move as too quickly, but I decided not to do that in this case just for the sake of simplicity, and it sounds weird, but I didn't want this particular animation to be too smooth, if that makes sense. So what I did instead was took every individual frame and lengthened it out like 2 frames worth, and that slowed it down just the perfect amount, and I didn't have to add any additional frames to like have to color and stuff. That was a stylistic choice, but just know that the correct answer is to add more frames so that your animation is smooth. Don't necessarily follow my example. What you may notice here is that I am expanding each frame because I made them too small in Procreate, so when I imported them in Dreams they were like half the size of the canvas, so that's another mistake I made. In the future I'll do like twice the dimensions I did before. Procreate Dreams is actually a program that it's designed that you can draw each frame inside the actual program locally, but the reason I chose to draw my frames in the original Procreate app was because Procreate Dreams is actually at this point lacking a couple of features that would have made it a little bit difficult for me to do the line art in there. For example, at this point within the app locally, you can't change your pen pressure or stabilization settings. You can't adjust the settings of brushes unless you import them, and there's no lasso tool. Just various features that would have slowed my process down if I had done it right in Procreate Dreams, so that's why I decided to do Procreate and then import those frames that I made in Procreate into Dreams. You can also see here I haven't figured out how to group things yet, so I am tediously like duplicating each individual frame and like repeating it that way. I learn eventually, like later in the video, but at this point it's probably painful for you to watch me do things the hard way. But yeah, about Procreate Dreams not having a lot of settings to start out, it doesn't bother me that much just because I have a good feeling that these settings will be added later to the app, so it really doesn't bother me that much that they're not there now. And I'm actually used to this style of animation too. My history is with MS Paint and Windows Movie Maker, so I'm used to making frames in one program and then importing them into another. I know in real animation programs, I think like in like Adobe Animate and stuff, and I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's common to be able to draw the frames right inside the animation program to begin with. But again, because of my history and what I'm used to, this doesn't really bother me that much. It was so nice to animate each character individually and then sort of put them together on multiple tracks. This is what I'm not used to and what I could have really used back in the day, having multiple tracks to animate on. And you can see like I'm gonna animate her mouth separately too. I was really happy that I was able to do that because that's something I've never been able to do before. I've always had to just animate each individual frame and then just time it perfectly right and stuff, but being able to animate different things like independently of each other was awesome. It was really fun. Experienced animators are probably rolling their eyes and being like, that's such a basic thing, but I've never had that before, so it makes me really excited. Back to importing frames into Procreate Dreams, an interesting quirk I've noticed is that whenever frames are imported, they go to the entire length of the timeline, and this point in the video is before I figured out that you can like split the frame and then just delete what I didn't need. But at this point in the video, I'm still doing things the hard way and I'm zooming all the way out and then shortening the length of each individual frame as I import it. Again, I'm figuring out a lot of things about this program for the first time as I work in this video, so please be patient and please bear with the tediousness of how I do things in the beginning. But at this point, it's starting to come together, so I finished the line art frames of both characters and I'm putting them together, and then as I animate them in Dreams, and once I have it the way that I want, I actually can go back to the sketch track and delete it. So that was cool too, so that I can have the sketch animation there, and then when I'm done with it, I can just delete it. Fun fact, so in my Windows Movie Maker days, that was with MS Paint Windows Movie Maker or Paint Tool Cyan Windows Movie Maker, I used to draw each frame, and obviously at first it would be the sketch, and then I would go back to those original sketch frames and then just draw the fully rendered frame and then save that as the frame, and then what I would be able to do is close Movie Maker and then open it again, and those sketch frames would just automatically be replaced by the new ones, and that was so convenient and nice, and I missed that so much. Anyway, so the line art of this animation is all done and I got it to look just the way I wanted it to, so now we're gonna move into coloring. This part I actually decided to do within Procreate Dreams. So what I thought was interesting is I could do another track below my line art track and put the color in for each frame, and I thought that was really cool, so I wanted to try it. And the reason why I didn't want to do the coloring in the original Procreate app was because I just wanted to keep it simple, and with the lack of features in Procreate Dreams, that helps with that. And I think if I did the coloring in the regular Procreate app, I feel like it would have added another layer of tediousness, but also I probably would have been tempted to make it like too complicated, and when the coloring's too complicated, it's like too hard to animate. So that's why I chose to color it in Procreate Dreams. This is one thing I've noticed that is probably just a glitch that they'll fix in the future, but when color picking, so pressing down your finger to choose a color to use again, I've noticed that in the regular Procreate app, it's very like intuitive. You just press down on the color and then that's the exact color you get. And in this program, you have to be mindful because it picks the color that's like a centimeter above where you're pressing down on, so that's something to keep in mind. So at this point in my coloring, I needed one of my custom brushes to color the stripe on her uniform, so I'm just importing that now. And this is one of my favorite custom brushes I've made, and I've actually given this away as a gift on my Patreon, so if you're interested in having this brush, you go ahead and check that out. I gave it away to my Cappuccino patrons, so yeah, that's there for your information. But anyway, yeah, so I'm going to continue coloring this frame, and the coloring process in Procreate Dreams was actually very easy, despite the lack of the more advanced features that Procreate has. But I really wasn't finding myself missing anything during the coloring process because the coloring for animation is typically on the simpler side anyway, so there were no issues there. Another quirk I've noticed about this new program is the color fill feature. So playing around with my practice animations, I figured this out, and it's the reason why here I'm not color filling anything, but I'm just drawing in the color manually and I'm not like color dropping anything. And it's because even if you increase the color fill threshold like as much as you can, it always leaves those white lines, like white outlines. So that's probably going to be fixed in the future, but it would have bothered me a lot to like color drop and then have to fix everything, and I couldn't have just left it there because it would have bothered me too much. So that's why I colored everything in manually. But I wouldn't say the coloring process was tedious at all, because for each individual frame, I was able to duplicate my original color. Well, this just because my animation was simple enough to do this, but I was able to duplicate my original color layer and then sort of erase and then fill in where I needed to. So once my first colored frame was done, then the rest of them were very easy to do as well. Alright, so now that all the colors are done, the animation is coming together. So at this point, this is when I learned how to group things. So before I animated the mouth, I just wanted to extend my base animation a little bit so I had a little bit more room to work with, because the mouth animation is going to be a little bit sporadic. Like I would like her mouth to be moving at some points and I would like it to be closed at some points. And it was also just really helpful to figure out how to group things so then I can more easily repeating animations instead of duplicating each individual frame. And this is what we have so far. It's coming together. I'm so happy with it so far. Okay, this part was interesting. Now we're gonna add the mouth animation. This part was very tricky. So the first thing I did is I went in with the closed mouth and just made that the default for the whole animation, and I had to line it up with each individual frame, which was tricky because she's not in one spot. She's kind of going up and down because she's walking. But once I did that, I grouped it and synced it with the rest of the animation. And the way I drew the mouth was helpful because the mouth open frames, thankfully they covered the mouth closed frame perfectly. So when I was ready to add the talking portions, all I had to do was repeat the same process. I had to sync it so that the mouth was perfectly placed on her face, which was a little bit more complicated because it's 2 frames of mouth animation, not just 1. But once that was finished, it was as simple as finding and placing in the animation where it fit. And I didn't have to do anything additional with hiding the closed mouth or anything. It just fit perfectly right on top. Again, I know this is such a simple aspect of animation, like being able to animate things on different tracks independently of each other, but to me it is so new. It's mind-blowing. It opens up so many more options, and I'm so happy I'm able to do this now because I've never been able to do it before. Alright, now that that's out of the way, the basic animation is done, and now we can move on to the background. For the background, I'm going simple, just doing a nice tree line and sky, and I know it's December, but technically we're still in the tail end of fall, so I wanted to do some autumn style trees. I thought they would be a little bit more aesthetically pleasing than just bare trees, even with a little bit of snow on them, but I also thought that if I did snowy trees, it would have looked a little bit too cold for the characters because they are in their winter uniforms, but they're not wearing scarves or coats. So I thought, let's do a late autumn scene and not like a winter scene just yet because it's a little too cold for that. I'm really excited to animate the background too, because this is another thing I've never been able to do before, is animate the background independently of the characters. And so with this, we're gonna do like a scrolling along type of thing because they're walking, so the background is going to be slowly moving along with them. So we're gonna take advantage of the features that Procreate Dreams offers us and see what we can do with that. Before animating it though, I did have to extend this background a little bit by just making 2 of it and putting it next to each other because it wasn't long enough initially to use as an animated background. So yeah, I am actually using the motion record feature of Procreate Dreams here, and I'm taking my Apple Pencil and I'm moving the background manually because I didn't know any other way to do it. And you will also notice the exact moment here that I realized I was doing it backwards. But once I fixed that and then I got it exactly the way I wanted it, not too shaky of movement, it is finally all done. This is the final animation, how it turned out, and I'm really happy with it. Like I mentioned before, these characters come from an early animation project of mine back in my early days of YouTube. And so long story short, I actually remembered that I had some old lines from the characters' original voice actors still in my email from forever ago. So as an afterthought, once this animation was all done, I figured, oh, let me try to take some of these old lines and sync it together with the animation as best as possible. And so this is the result of that. And again, it's not perfect because I only got the idea to do this after I had fully finished and rendered the original animation, but I hope you can still enjoy it anyway. It's a little bit rough, it's not synced perfectly, but yeah, this is a little taste of kind of what my early days of YouTube were like. I'll link the profiles of the voice actors in the description, so yeah, enjoy this bonus clip.
So anyway, have you thought about which club you want to join?
Well, I don't know if I'm even gonna join a club.
Hey, I had a really cool dream last night.
I did too, actually. What was yours about?
Well, it started out.
I hope you enjoyed that. It's cool, it's different, and it might be very nostalgic for some of you, including myself. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking it and possibly subscribing to see more from me. I'm very interested in making more animations in the future, so hopefully that's interesting to you too. Thanks again for watching. See you next time. Bye-bye!